Welcome, welcome, Ed.
Thank you for having me.
You've been an AI skeptic for a while, which as have I been, and I'd love you to talk about sort of where we are at this moment with AI.
So we're at a very hysterical moment for the industry. They have spent years promising that this stuff would become this autonomous panacea for every capitalist element. It would automate every job. It would do all these things. In reality, what we've got is something that can generate some code sometimes that can do a poor man's Google search and costs more than anything has ever cost in the world, ever. It is larger. It is 10, 15 times the size of Amazon Web Services as far as costs go. $1 trillion plus already invested. They're planning to invest trillions of dollars more. Data centers being built for demand for AI compute that doesn't exist. And the two largest companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, lose billions of dollars. Every single AI startup is unprofitable, and none of it resembles any previous era. People will say, oh, well, Amazon Web Services lost a lot of money. $53 billion over 10 years, actually 11 years. Uber lost a lot of money, $32 billion over 5 to 6 years, then they became profitable. OpenAI, they lost $21 billion in 2025. These companies burn money, they have no path to profitability, and the actual underlying technology, large language models, no one can prove the actual return on investment. No one can do it. It's not measurable. And so everyone's very hysterical right now. They're making bigger claims. They're claiming it's too scary to release Mythos, which has now been banned, kind of as a result of that, which I'm sure we'll get into. Long and short of it is we're in the crazy time. We're in the irrational exuberance, but there's a much more desperation than I think than during the great financial crisis.
Well, we haven't gotten to the crisis yet. So, or we got to the spending, but not the crisis. So when I talk to people about AI, what they say to me is they say it's getting better and better and better. And so it's in a process of getting better, and it will get so much better that eventually its betterness will get better, right? That it'll be a sort of infinite loop of smartness that will get itself smarter, that will continue. Is there any truth to that?
To be clear, when they say better, AI models are measured on benchmarks specifically made for large language models, because you can't really rely on them to do real tasks. You can't just be like, go and do my job, because they don't do that. They are generative models that create text or images in some cases, and they can sometimes do Excel spreadsheets. But the thing is, when I say sometimes, it's because of this inherent thing called hallucinations, because these models are probabilistic. Even at their most complex level, what they're doing is working out what the most likely thing they're meant to do is. They don't have consciousness, they don't think. So those hallucinations are when they authoritatively state something or do something that isn't true or the ideal action. Long story short is, getting better is not something that anyone's able to measure in an ROI sense, in a return on investment sense. They can write code. The code might work, the code might not work. But code is a much more complex thing than just thing that does thing and then program happens. It is, especially for larger companies, a long-term project which needs to be read by other people, needs to be understood by other people. It's meant to have some degree of commentary that tells you why it was built. Except you're writing this code using an LLM with no intention, with no thoughts. This eventually becomes cumbersome. It becomes over-verbose, just meaning there's a lot of code and it doesn't need to be. And also, the more you use a large language model as a software engineer, the less you know about writing software, the more dependent you become on it. This doesn't mean that it's writing good code. It just means you, as a person, are less able to write it yourself. So you'll notice that I'm only mentioning code. And that's because it's okay with code. There are a guy called Carl Brand from the Internet of Bugs describes it well as makes the easy things easier and the harder things harder. Very simple things it can do. The problem is with large language models is they're not very good at anything. You can't, there are not many jobs that are just text. They're not good at writing. You've got a lot of slop on Substack as a result. They've really eroded the quality of Substack. But large language models are not good at jobs. They're not good at deterministic actions or a replicable one. They're not really good at anything, which is why no one seems to be able to actually show any proof that they're replacing jobs or that they're good at something. You hear a lot of ephemera being like, oh, it's right. Spotify's CEO said, oh, our best coders are not writing any code anymore. You'll notice that doesn't result in better software, more stable software. Across the board, use any app. everything feels less stable. Everything feels more brittle. And that's partly because of AI and partly because the companies themselves don't really care anymore. So you can't really do things with AI, despite all the promises, despite all the data centers.
Okay, so this story is cybersecurity executives urge the Trump administration to ease restrictions on Anthropic. Can you explain what is happening with Anthropic and why that has, I mean, is that just partisan, or is that they're actually cooking something up?
So to explain, rolling back a few years, 2023, both Sam Altman of OpenAI, Dario Amodei of Anthropic, both were saying, our models are too scary, they're too powerful, they're too scary. They've spent years building this up. Anthropic, particularly nasty about this. Dario Amodei, of course, saying that 50% of white-collar jobs will be eliminated in a few years. The reason I mention that is, back in April, they announced something called Mythos, a new model that they claimed was too powerful to launch because of its cybersecurity capabilities. Now, independent researchers have now said, no, it's not. It's good at finding some things. It has a lot of false positives, meaning it claims there's a bug when there isn't. But putting all that aside, Anthropic said it's too powerful. We have to meter it out. Only a few trusted organizations. A month later, they're like, okay, we're giving it to 150 more organizations. Then in early June, I believe, they announced something called Fable. Now, Claude Fable was Mythos, but you couldn't do any cybersecurity on it. If you asked, it refused. It would drop down to another model. A few days ago, a week, I think, before this podcast will go out, there was an announcement that by Anthropic saying we've had to cut access to Fable and cut access to Mythos due to the government putting export controls on them, because the government was told by Amazon CEO Andy Jassy that apparently it was possible to jailbreak Fable. So by which I mean tell Fable something to give you the power of Mythos.
Right.
Semaphore reported that maybe China got access. It's not clear. So what happened? Maybe partisan? It may indeed, because there was a huge battle between them a few months ago with the Department of Defense. But partisan or not, they're blocking it because Anthropic spent years saying our models are big and scary. Be scared of them. Be scared of the scary models. Be scared. And someone took them seriously. Now there probably is a bit of Hegseth did a victory lap on Twitter about it. So, of course, there is a degree of partisanship. But at the same, and actually some of the reporting have suggested it might be as well. But at the same time, it does come back to this thing of the AI industry has sold itself on fear. I think they thought that they would just scare everyone into handing over their credit cards, when actually what happened was they ended up getting banned. And this is actually interesting because they could theoretically get unbanned, but apparently Anthropic is refusing to fix the jailbreak. But again, it's coming from the government. Who knows?
Your theory of the case is that this is all just bullshit. That that it's not so powerful that it needs regulation. It's just so scammy that it needs the government to believe that it needs regulation because investors will pour more money into it that way.
Because if they had to talk about what the thingy did today, they would have to be like, yeah, it can do some code generation and it can summarize documents and it can write emails. It's quite boring when you talk about what it can do. So they only ever, I wish they'd regulate it so they could only talk about what it can do. I'm tired of hearing about what it will do. But this is the thing. If they had to describe it in today's terms, how would they possibly justify the data centers? How would they possibly justify the valuations?
No.
The whole economy is run on kayfabe right now. The whole wrestling thing of pretending this is big and serious and also scary when we're dealing with very boring normal cloud software. Except because, and I had this theory called the .com bubble, where the tech industry has run out of big ideas. They don't have a smartphone. They don't have a new cloud computing. They don't have a new thing to sell us, a new thing to grow forever. So they have to pretend that this is it because they got nothing else.
And because the Magnificent Seven drives so much of our economy, if they can't grow, that means that the whole economy doesn't grow.
Exactly. And NVIDIA being the largest company on the stock market is extremely scary because it's not just that they have to sell a lot of GPUs.
Explain to our listeners, because remember, we're politics podcast, so you need to explain a little bit more about NVIDIA, what it does.
So, NVIDIA is a company that makes various things, but the big thing that they're making money on is something called a GPU. Now, you don't need to know much about it other than the fact that These things are really expensive, 50 to 70 grand a piece, and you need thousands of them in a big data center, multi-billion-dollar data center, which takes a ton of power. You do two things with them. You run inference, which is the process of creating the output. You ask ChatGPT for a picture of Scooby-Doo with a gun, it spits it out. That's inference. Right. And then there's training.
That does seem to be the only use for most of this.
It's just the Scooby-Doo
with a gun.
Scooby-Doo with a gun. But nevertheless, there's also training, which is both feeding the models information to build them and then training them after the fact. So they spit out an output and you say, that's good or that's bad. Very simple. So the reason that NVIDIA has been doing so well is everyone's AI crazy. And all of the Magnificent Seven, so primarily Meta, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, have been buying billions of dollars of GPUs, hundreds of billions at this point, so that they can build these AI data centers so that they hope that something happens. I know it sounds like a flattening of the situation, but really it is a case of so that they will have AI and AI will do something and make money. That's vague because that's about as far as they've gone. The majority of their AI revenue, Meta doesn't really have AI revenue. They're screwed. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, most of their revenue is OpenAI and Anthropic paying them to rent GPUs. So to be clear, the stock market is really heavily weighted on NVIDIA, on NVIDIA's continued growth. Then the reason that everyone's buying these GPUs is they think that there's massive demand for AI. In reality, the only real demand for AI is two companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, who both lose billions of dollars. There's no other, the demand does not exist outside of these companies. And it's extremely worrying to me because all the data centers being built, you know that thing you said earlier about how, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. The data centers are being built because people are saying, well, there's going to be this demand.
Right.
There's gonna be demand for sure. It doesn't exist. It's minuscule, and it's genuinely quite worrying to me.
What's interesting about this problem, in my mind, is that it's different than the problem that everyone has been telling me about. So the problem, I was talking to a senator yesterday, and he was saying, that unless we regulate AI, it's going to take all the white-collar jobs, which is what we've heard again and again. But there's a scenario where we never even get there because it can't take all the, it can't take all the jobs. It takes it does the very low level software coding, but that's it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It frustrates me. Like the Bernie Sanders piece in the New York Times really frustrated me. We need to do 50% so we can share in the profits of AI. Let me know when you find those, Bernie. Everyone has got themselves tied up with this idea of the white collar apocalypse, the white collar job apocalypse. But that whole thing is a marketing movement. It's not connected to any actual layoffs. There was massive overhiring in 2021 and 2022 across the economy. These layoffs are an example of what happens when you overhire repeatedly. And they're also hiring tons of people too. A lot of companies have increased their hiring of software engineers. Why would they do that when coding is automated? Well, the answer is it's not being automated.
Right.
So the white-collar job apocalypse is entirely marketing. It is built to market the idea that AI is inevitable. Because if they can't say that, then they can't sell their stuff at the scale they need to. And honestly, I'm disappointed, but not surprised by the government's response of, we vaguely got to do something about this maybe. We need to regulate this. And then the regulation never actually seems to happen or indeed apply to the thing that's happening today.
Well, they have never regulated any technology at all. Like Facebook, Instagram, nada. YouTube, nothing is regulated. There hasn't been any regulation at all. Yeah. So they're not going to do, one of the sort of smart things that companies have figured out is that they ask for regulation. And since Congress is so incompetent, they won't ever get it anyway. And if they do, it would end up being a barrier for smaller companies anyway, because they would likely set some of the regulation.
But what's funny you mentioned that. One of the other myths about all of this is that Anthropic and OpenAI are even startups. They're not. They may be funded like them, discussed like them. Their infrastructure, so the data centers that run their services, from the very beginning, were built by Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. They are rich kids. About 150 billion, I estimate, is what their actual infrastructure cost. No one talks about that because everyone says, oh, they're plucky startups. No, they're not. They're subsidiaries of the largest companies in the world. And of course, they ask for regulation. They do it in this mealy-mouthed way that is always marketing. Anthropic mentioned the other day, just before getting banned, by the way, that they think that the government should have the option to pause a model in case it's too dangerous. But you'll also notice in that piece, it said, oh, but we're going to do recursive self-improvement, which means an AI that trains itself. It's all marketing. It's all an attempt to deceive and make you think of a technology that doesn't exist, but judge the one that does today as if it's inevitable it becomes that. As if LLMs will magically become this autonomous, reliable software that they've never ever been. There is no sign of it.
I have talked to like a lot of people where they've said, you know, I've said, well, okay, so it does coding and it does writing. It does some writing. But what about, like, for example, in the Times, there was some AI writing that was very good.
I'm not familiar with the writing.
But,
the one that was reported, most
of the writing is terrible, but I mean, just, you know, I mean, what, like, I've asked people before, what can AI do? And they said, well, self-driving cars.
Which is not, just to be clear, though, self-driving cars are not the technology behind OpenAI and Anthropic.
Right. And also, aren't many of the self-driving cars actually have somebody behind the wheel?
If they don't have, they do in some cases. When they don't, they have a kind of an overwatch that could intervene. They can't intervene and, like, control. That is, I believe, a myth. They can't, like, remote control them, but they can direct them. But at the same time, I find autonomous cars interesting, but I was trying to leave a casino in Vegas yesterday, and I got stuck behind 3 of the bloody things. Like, there are real issues there.
They get stuck.
They get confused by driving. Anyway, sorry.
You know, I was talking to an AI, a person who's, you know, very into it, and said, you know, they're going to be robots. How would that work?
Well, robots are, again, a different technology to... So, just to be clear, the only thing that those data centers are getting built for, the only thing that OpenAI and Anthropic are doing is large language models. They are not doing anything with robotics, cars, or any of that.
And that's like you steal my book and train computers on my book.
And stuff from GitHub and code from the internet.
And what is that? And that does what? That trains the AI model to write code, sort of, and write my books, sort of, but not that well.
So that's called pre-training. So it's just, you take a ton of GPUs, you feed a bunch of data into the models, and then you keep doing that, and theoretically, there are some other processes involved, and theoretically, at the end, you have a better model. There is also other training, but nevertheless, that's mostly what you're discussing, yes. That has absolutely nothing to do with robotics or autonomous cars. To be clear, both of those are very data intensive, but they are not the things. When someone mentions AI in the news right now, it's nothing to do with it. The reason that Altman and his cronies used AI as the thing to do, as the term, is so that everyone would conflate all of these useful AI things, these things that are actually innovative, with this large language model situation, which, by the way, has been, while there have been improvements, has done basically the same thing for the last few years. There is diminishing returns on feeding them training data. It's a very strange situation, and I think what it is, it's part of a larger problem in the world of media literacy and of the authority crisis we have, where so much of our economy is controlled by people that trust the last smart-sounding person they had, when actually this LLMs are a large-scale exploitation of ignorance and of trust in the wrong authorities.
It also seems like we're just being, like, this is almost the same as the housing bubble.
It is, but it's just, I really want to be clear. If anyone leaves this is not a too big to fail situation. Too big to fail referred to when the banks were going to collapse after the great financial crisis, and it's not TARP. It was not the rescue package. It was the repo window and the Federal Reserve feeding hundreds of billions of dollars to the banks every month. Might have been every week, because the underlying loan industry kind of would have collapsed otherwise. In this case, like the actual economics of this situation are very strange in that the money being spent, the money flowing into the economy is almost exclusively building data centers and buying GPUs from NVIDIA and the associated hardware and the construction. It's not from buying AI services. The actual revenues of these companies are not that big. They are kind of a footnote of the larger economy. They all lose money, but even their revenues are kind of pathetic. And so the great financial crisis was horrifying in that a lot of people got loans that they shouldn't have, but at least it was for houses. At least it was for something with value. Yeah, for a thing. It was also surrounded by a consumer debt crisis, but putting all that aside, in this case, the great financial crisis that could be to come, where the stock market bubble will resemble the dot-com bubble. But I think at the side is going to be the collapse of these data centers. Because think of it like this, these things cost billions of dollars, they take billions of dollars of debt, then they build the thing, and then they find out the demand isn't there. That loan goes sideways. And I think there was $178.5 billion of these things in the US alone last year. That is like a 1%er great housing crisis. The problem is that a great deal of that was issued by private credit. And private credit is principally funded by pensions, by insurance annuities. So teachers' pensions funds. There's also cop ones, fireman ones, all of it. Just a lot of innocent people's money is flowing into this industry. And to be clear, you can't really bail this out. You can't bail out everything because I just don't see how even a right-wing Congress could possibly clear greenlighting hundreds of billions of dollars for private credit. But then there's the greater problem, which is all of this falls apart. You can't bail out the stock market. You can't bail out a stock price. If NVIDIA's revenue drops because people aren't buying the GPUs to put in data centers, that's not a bailout situation. You don't bail that out. OpenAI runs out of money. Bailing them out doesn't fix the greater problem of them constantly losing money. And nationalizing them doesn't really make sense.
Well, nationalize what? Nothing.
Exactly.
Ed, we're way out of time, but I love this conversation. I want you to come back. I would love to. AI. I continue to agree with this, and it's one of these things where it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's definitely money to be made, but thank you, Ed.
Thank you for having me.